Hey everyone, SweetJohnnyCage here, back with a storytime video. This time I'm going to be talking about the Triforce Percent Ocarina of Time, it's called a speed run maybe, that was presented at Summer Games Done Quick 2022. I realize this video is a little late. Frankly, I didn't have time to watch GDQ this year, which was like the first time ever that I was actually just busy during the event, and I barely watched any of it. But one of my close friends, as it was happening, was like, "Did you watch this?" And I was like, "No, I didn't have time." And he's like, "You should watch this." And I finally got around to watching it today. And holy shit, do I have a story for you. So what we're going to do is I am literally just going to play the run like this and just talk over it. So starting off, 100% of the credit of this run obviously goes to the entire TaskBot community that worked on this for Triforce Percent for that project. Save State, the person controlling the human element of the TaskBot run, as well as the other two commentators who I believe are programmers on this project. But basically what we need to do here is I'm going to link the run in the description. Please watch it. It is absolutely incredible. There's a few things you need to know, though. So, and this is sort of a spoiler for the run and a spoiler for the story of the run. So if you like, watch it and then come back here for my sort of story time that is related to this. But there is like a story within this run that they're telling. So if there's a spoiler for that we're going to just get out of the way. Okay. So the way a TaskBot works is it's basically a program that inputs specific button commands and joystick movements and stuff like that into a game at alarming speeds, like as fast as a computer can go, basically. And then they're also using something called arbitrary code execution, which allows them to kind of hack the game in real time in a way. That's sort of like the simplest explanation. It's a lot more complicated than that, but that's kind of what they're doing. And then this allows them to like create custom text and custom models and like a whole bunch of stuff. So the spoiler for this is that there are elements of this that are created by the Triforce Percent team. And so the title of the video is OOT Triforce Percent Ace Showcase, Arbitrary Code Execution Showcase, TaskBot brings us here together at SGDQ 2022, parentheses, beta plus new content. So there is fan-made content happening in this video that is somewhat disguised. However, the runner and the commentators and everybody are very clear about what is actually on the cartridge as it's happening. Now, the other thing that you can do is you can go to the website for the run, which is gettriforce.link, which is hilarious. And then in the FAQ right here, it says here's a complete list of all the debug/beta content left on the cartridge, which we showed off, the inventory editor, the R-Wing, part of the text patching system for the 64 disk drive expansion that was planned for the game, the beta Kokiri head and body model, the butterfly, arguable meaning like there was hints of it, but not the full thing. The full Ocarina system. Ability to change between child and adult without pulling the Master Sword. The giant magenta rupee, including the behavior and exploding. Melting the ice in Zora's domain. That's a big one that we're going to talk about in this video. The beta Great Fairy, pedestal of the Ocarina, Triforce wipe animation before entering the Triforce room, and the beta staff roll cutscene flying through Kokiri Forest. The alpha and beta content, which was shown in the official pre-release footage and screenshots, which they recreated so they implemented it into the game using the TaskBot and Ace, equipping medallions to C buttons, Unicorn Fairy Fountain, Beta Great Fairy Fountain, Triforce Room, Triforce Pieces and Model, Triforce Light Model, Triforce Chess Model, and then urban legends that were brought to life. These are basically like exactly what it says, like urban legends that they implemented into the game. Beating the Running Man and Overture of the Sages, which is a song. And then everything else that they made up is all the dialogue, Lost Woods exit code, Gerudo Valley having created the Song of Time, Noboru teaching it to Child Link, Running Man boss battle, Sage's Charm, Chamber of Sages sequence, and all the content after obtaining the Triforce. Okay. So, there is a bit of hubbub when this run first premiered of like, oh, this isn't real. They're like making shit up. How dare they betray people? It's horseshit. Just watch it. It's cool as shit. That's what I'll say. And as somebody, and here we're going to start my story time video, as somebody who hunted the Triforce in 1999 and 2000, I was getting emotional watching this run. And so we're going to talk about it. I might skip around a little bit, but I think I could probably talk over the entire run about my adventures of hunting for the Triforce personally as a kid. Okay, here we go. Oh, whoops, this is on 2x speed. Okay, so basically what they're doing is they are playing through the game, or really TaskBot is playing through the game. You can see that they have controllers hooked up to all 4 ports. They're not actually controllers, they're wires going into the robot that's running the script. And it is being played on original hardware on an original cartridge. So what they're able to do is pull up assets that were left on the cartridge, put them back into the game, and also add in their own stuff using the robot. However, it's all done on original hardware. That computer that he's like the computer is not actually creating anything. It's just implementing things and changing things and manipulating things. Okay, so dig, if you will, a picture and get comfortable. Ocarina of Time released, I believe, either September, October, or November 1998. It's hard to remember because back then, games came out when they came out. Like you had release windows for major games and like console releases. You would have a release date, but your store, like your Toys R Us or your electronics boutique or your Babbage's or your Funko Land, your KB Toys, they wouldn't always get everything on release day. So, basically, that means that, like, even if you pre-ordered a game, you may not get it for a couple weeks after it's supposed to have come out. Like, that's just the way it was back then. It really wasn't until, like, the PlayStation 2, maybe late PS1 era, that games had firm release dates, and you were often able to get them on release date. Really didn't happen much before then. So, Ocarina of Time comes out. You'll have to excuse me, I'm going to drink a lot during this video. I'm getting over some allergies from my trip to New York. So, yeah. My voice is a little scratchy. So, Ocarina of Time comes out, blows the world away. And Ocarina of Time is not even my favorite Zelda game. Majora's Mask is. Ocarina of Time is kind of like third. It's like Majora's Mask, Wind Waker, Ocarina of Time. And the reason for that personally is because Ocarina of Time, although it was the first 3D Zelda game and like changed the industry and changed the way games were made, the formula of the game, or like the progression of the game, is A Link to the Past. You have 3 dungeons in one world, 6 or 7 dungeons in another. Like, that's the way it is. And there's a plot twist in between them. You know what I mean? Like, in A Link to the Past, you pull out the Master Sword, Zelda gets kidnapped, you go to rescue her, you're brought to the Dark World. In Ocarina of Time, you do the 3 dungeons. Zelda, you go back to the castle, Zelda is escaping, you pull up the Master Sword, and you're an adult. Like, the plot twist happens then. Dark World is like everything has turned evil. Future, in Ocarina of Time, the world's gone to shit. You know, like, it's not good. But it's the same overall formula. So, like, after I did that 3rd dungeon, and once I got to the castle, I was like, oh. Like, I was 10, and I recognized that. You know? Anyway, that's why it's not my favorite. But everything else, fantastic. So, back during this time, I never had a Game Genie growing up. And Game Genie, for those of you who don't know, was an accessory. It was available for NES, Super NES, Sega Genesis, maybe Master System. I think there was one for Game Boy. But basically, it was like an adapter of sorts. Like, you would plug it into the cartridge slot, and then sort of like Sonic and Knuckles on Genesis, you would plug the game into the Game Genie. And then you would start up your console, and the console would read the Game Genie first, allow you to execute code, which would give you like infinite lives or a level select or something. And then you would play the game. And then the codes that you entered in the Game Genie would patch onto the game, and then you could cheat. Just more or less like a cheat device. That is why the vast majority of people bought it. There was a huge lawsuit between Nintendo and Galoob, who is the manufacturer of Game Genie in the United States. And basically, Nintendo or whoever was suing them was saying, like, this is a cheat device. That's all it's used for. And Galoob was like, no, it allows folks to, like, do different things in games. It's not just for cheating. That was sort of their defense. Didn't work out. I believe they went bankrupt. However, the next iteration of these sort of cheat devices was the GameShark Game Enhancer. And that was manufactured by Interact in the United States. It may have been someone else in Europe. And so, with the GameShark, it was literally the same thing. It was an adapter that you plugged into your console, you put the cartridge on top of it, and you executed codes, got, infinite health, infinite lives, whatever. If you were playing like Final Fantasy VII, for example, you could get like unlimited limit breaks or infinite health or all weapons, like stuff like that. The PlayStation version, funny enough, the original PlayStation 1, for I'd say like the first 3 or 4 revisions of that console, it had a parallel port or a serial port on the back right. If I had my PS1 accessible, I'd show it to you. It was covered up by a door that you could just pull off, and then it was like this, 80 pin or something like that, serial port, and then you would plug the GameShark into the back of it, and then the system would read the parallel port first, or the serial port first, bring you to the GameShark menu, and then you would do whatever you wanted to do. However, after a while, to combat GameShark usage, excuse me, Sony stopped putting the serial port in the back of the console. They completely removed the functionality. The port wasn't there anymore. And it's not, I don't think it was like covered up, sort of like the, so the Xbox One, if you open it up, it just doesn't have a disk drive in it, but it's the same Xbox One. Like, it's the same thing, same board, just no disk drive. Like, they just fully removed this fucking port out of the PlayStation because of the GameShark. Anyway, the GameShark was a bit more sophisticated than the Game Genie. Had a much better UI. It usually came with a VHS tape that taught you how to create codes of your own. And this is like if you use Cheat Engine on PC, it is literally the same exact process. Start the game, do something, do like an analysis of the values, like a printout of the hex values, change whatever it is you're trying to change, and then run another analysis of the hex values, of the hexadecimal values, see what has changed and keep narrowing it down. It's the same process as it was on the GameShark, and basically the Game Genie as well, except it was a bit tougher to do on the Game Genie. Because on the GameShark, there was a button on it. And if you press that button mid-game, it would take you back into the GameShark menu so you could look at the changes. I don't believe Game Genie had that functionality at all. So, with the GameShark, Nintendo was constantly updating their games to like combat GameShark usage. And because the GameShark was sort of like the original Game Genie, at least on Nintendo 64, they couldn't like modify the console really to prevent its usage. It was literally just a cartridge that plugged in like any other cartridge. They couldn't really do much to combat it system-wise. Bit different on the PlayStation. Sony was able to remove that serial port, like I mentioned. However, after that came the GameShark CDX, which was just a CD with a memory card, and they were able to execute the code over a memory card. Anyway, with the Nintendo 64, they started updating games, and so game compatibility would change. So a game like Ocarina of Time, if you plugged it into a GameShark, or at that time it was called the GameShark Pro, it wouldn't work. I believe it would either ignore the GameShark completely and just boot right into Ocarina of Time, or booting from the GameShark into Ocarina of Time would cause the system to hang. Hang meaning it would just never get into the game. I can't remember which, but it was one or the other, or something like that. So, with the GameShark Pro, there was a new menu called, I think it was just called Game Keys or something like that. And basically, what this did was it was a menu that had specific code strings. And the way GameShark worked was it was like a code was a string of hexadecimal values. It was 0 through 9, A through F. So there was 16 possible combinations in each digit. And there was I think it was 7 or 8 digits in a primary string and then 4 digits at the end. And I think those 4 digits could be modified to change certain things. Like there were attributes. I know we're getting a little bit in the weeds here, but this is kind of like an in the weeds conversation. So the last 4 could be modified to change certain things within the code itself. Like if you wanted 50 lives versus 99, 0 lives versus 1,000 lives, you would change the last 4 to 0001 or 1,000, and that would change the value, something like that. Could have been the last 2, might have been the last 4. Hard to remember. So, GameShark Pro has a new menu called Game Keys. And what this allowed you to do was to use the GameShark with the games that Nintendo was actively combating GameShark with, like Ocarina of Time. Like I said, if you plugged in a GameShark, just a regular GameShark, plugged in Ocarina of Time, it wouldn't work. However, with the GameShark Pro, what you could do is you could plug in the GameShark with a game like GoldenEye. GoldenEye did not require a special game key on the GameShark. It came out in 97. Ocarina of Time came out in 98. So it was an older game. It allowed you to get into the GameShark. With GoldenEye plugged in, I can't believe we did all this. With GameShark plugged in and GoldenEye plugged in on top of it, you could get into the GameShark, go into the Game Key menu, select Ocarina of Time if it was there. If not, the key was provided in the manual and you just write it yourself. It looks something like this, kind of like what this dude is doing right now is changing hexadecimal values to issue certain commands. That's what we were doing on GameShark, which is what made me think of this. So once you did that, you press start and it would say, okay, turn the console off, quickly swap on Ocarina of Time. Take out GoldenEye, put on Ocarina of Time, turn the console back on. And the reason for that is because the N64 had 5 or 6 seconds of RAM storage after the console turned off. The RAM was still active. And the reason they did this, it's all connected. The reason they did this is if you were alive at this time, or if you've done any of this research, Banjo-Kazooie had a special menu called Stop and Swap. What this menu was supposed to do was there were hidden items within Banjo-Kazooie that you were supposed to be able to transfer into Banjo-Tooie. These were these secret eggs and an ice key. And Banjo-Tooie was originally planned to be a was it planned to be a cartridge game or a disc game? I can't remember, but basically what you were supposed to do is you're supposed to be able to access the stop and swap menu, select the item that you want to bring into Banjo-Tooie, press the button, quickly swap out. I mean, literally, rip it out, put it in, press the power again, get into Banjo-Tooie, and then the item would be there. It would have been stored in RAM. Once Banjo-Tooie recognizes what's in the RAM, it takes it out and puts it in the game. So you're able to swap items between games. However, I think Nintendo was no, you can't do that. You can't expect a 5-year-old to be able to understand this. These are supposed to be accessible games for everybody on our console. And since the 64 disk drive was ultimately scrapped, never saw the light of day in North America, only had 12 or 13 games in Japan, it was just it was scrapped. It was literally a hidden menu that was still within the game files, but you needed a special code to access it, which you could do in the game, which I thought was a nice treat by Rare. Anyway, getting back to the GameShark. So after you input the key using GoldenEye, you swap in Ocarina of Time, either by hot swapping and power cycling, I can't really remember that part, or you just do it within the menu. So once you do that, now you are able to use the GameShark with Ocarina of Time. So your standard codes were there. Infinite hearts, infinite magic, all items, all tunics, all whatever. there was a levitation code where you pressed L on the N64 controller, which was largely a useless button. I don't think it had a function in Ocarina of Time before this. And it allowed you to levitate and fly over things. This allowed you to get into Gerudo Valley as a child, or past that gate as Child Link. It allowed you to get into the Shadow Temple as a child, or really anywhere as a child. It allowed you to get into places as an adult that you weren't supposed to. Like, you can get inside the Deku Tree as an adult by levitating to the top of it and dropping in through the trunk, like, to do cool things like that. Sometime in, I think, 1999, a discovery was made on the GameShark. One of the first discoveries was being able to change the tunic color to kind of anything you wanted. The whole color gamut was there of like this 128 colors that the N64 could display or something like that. And so, like, the cool thing was like the white tunic. You know, it was like sort of the genesis of Fierce Deity in a way. You could spawn in the R-Wing. Which was like, they talk about it in this video. It was borrowed from Star Fox 64 because it was an existing asset, and then they used it to program the movement of Volvagia for the Fire Temple boss, and yeah, it was just in the game. I think you could get it without a GameShark, but it was just easy to do that way. Keep the fairy Ocarina as adult Link, stuff like that. Sometime in 99, another discovery was made, and they called it the beta code. And what this code was a string of characters, and then you can modify the last 4 values. Maybe it was the last 2. I think it was 4, though. Which meant that you had like 16 to the 4th power, which is like 65,000 or something like that, different possible outcomes. And so basically you would put in this beta code, start Ocarina of Time, and then something would happen. A lot of times it was nothing. A lot of times you would just start the game, and then it would just like put you into a weird camera angle in a forest grotto, and you couldn't do anything. It was literally just a dead screen, no purpose. A lot of them were like that. However, some of them were playable. Sometimes you would spawn as Child Link at night during the special night cycle where Zelda is running away. But now you're free to explore. You can go wherever you want. And so what you could do was just kind of, you could explore. Sometimes, if you went to Gerudo Valley, instead of spawning into Gerudo Valley, you would spawn to this dusty white space, like this white void, and then rocks would come out of nowhere and form the Triforce. But they were like Ocarina of Time boulder textures, and it'd be playing the music of the goddess. And it was just like, what the fuck is happening? Like, why is this happening? And so there was a website way back when. This is the time of GameFAQs. This is the time of Antagonist. This is the time of AOL. Like, on AOL, you could type in a keyword instead of a full web address. If you typed in keyword ant, you would get brought to this Antagonist website, but it had a specially sized window on AOL. It was like an AOL-specific website. If you typed in keyword N64, it would bring you to the N64 section of Antagonist. Typed in PSX, PlayStation. I don't think Dreamcast ever made it. So on and so forth. And on Antagonist, there were forums. There was news. I remember vividly in, I think, 1999. When did Majora's Mask come out? 2000? Majora's Mask release date. 2000. So I think it was 1999. In 99, there was, if you went to keyword N64, it's a rectangle box. And I think on the left side, it was like news, forum, files. You could like download files from this thing, like mostly sound files. And then it was cool. You could play them in chat rooms, but only you could hear it or anybody else that had it downloaded. Anyway, and then on the right side, there was like quick links to articles. And the top one was a preview of the number one article. In 1999, the first screenshot of Majora's Mask was posted. And at this time, it was just called Zelda Gaiden, which I believe in Japanese just means sequel or 2 or something like that. And it was, we didn't know what it was at the time. There was no description. I think it was just a leaked screenshot. But it was the clock in Clocktown. And then the UI of the time, it looked very different, but it was in the bottom center where it should have been. And so it was just like, oh, there's a new time mechanic in the next Zelda game. What is it? And what is this thing that we're looking at? Like, we didn't know it was a clock. We didn't know it was Clocktown, but we could tell it looked like a clock. Anyway, on Antagonist, there was a forum. There was GameFAQs. I think IGN might have been around at this time. And then there were still news groups, but I didn't know anything about that at the time. However, there were a lot of fan sites at this time. You could make a Max Pages website or a GeoCities website or a Yahoo website. Like, website builders were a dime a dozen. I made plenty of Dragon Ball fan sites on Max Pages. If maxpages.com/Church of Trunks still exists, that's your boy right there. So I think if you go to the Internet Archive and you look for that, it'll come up. Websites had guest books back in the day. Like, you could sign the guest book, let people know you were there. Anyway, there was a website, and I'm struggling to remember the name, but for some reason I think it was j64.com or something like that. And j64.com, I feel like, was where the beta code was first published or the discussion first started. And there was a thread, or several threads, I think, of people saying, hey, I tried out this permutation of the beta code. Here's what happened. And then more and more of these threads started popping up. And so, I kind of joined in. And mind you, I'm 10, 11 years old at this point. I'm that kid on the internet. But I didn't have like a lot of friends growing up. I would generally have like one or two close friends for like the school year, and then we'd ride bikes in the summer. But like, for some reason, the summer between 4th and 5th grade, I know exactly why this happened. So, sidebar story time. I had a friend growing up. He was from Queens. He moved to Long Island, and I became close friends with him. But then in the summer of 99 going into 2000, my sister was babysitting him one time, and he had friends over, and they were like, he had a basement, and like, it was a finished basement. That's where we play games. But she said like he was down there for a long time with his friends, and it didn't sound like they were doing anything, just like got eerily quiet. And so she went down there and they were drinking. Mind you, they're like 11, 12 years old at this point. Like, that's problem behavior. So like, they took a beer out of the fridge or something, and like, his parents just sort of laughed about it. Like, they didn't really do anything. And so like, my sister told my mom, and then like, my mom was like, no, like, Johnny, you're never hanging out with this kid again. Like, clearly bad influence. No. And then I don't think my sister ever babysat him again, like, ever. And like, mind you, I'm like 11, 12 years old. Like, I still want to hang out with him. I'm like, well, I wasn't there. I wasn't drinking. Like, why am I getting punished? Like, that's sort of the thing. Like, I'm losing a friend over this. And like, I remember he called me up to go to the skate park one time. We used to skate at 516 skate park in Copeg, New York. And I remember my mom was like running on a treadmill, and he called me, and I was like, can I please go to the skate park with Mike? And then his name was Mike. And then I remember my mom being like, is he on the phone? And I was like, yeah. And she was like, cover that phone right now. And then she was like, you're not going with him. And I was like, okay. So I get it back on the phone. I'm like, yeah. My mom said no. And he's like, yeah, I heard. And like, that was like the last time I think he ever asked to hang out with me. I saw his mom many years later when I was working at a grocery store when I was like finishing college, and his younger sister was there. I didn't recognize her because the last I saw her, she was like a literal baby. But as I recognized his mom, she was like, I wish Mike hung out with you more. Like, I feel like he would have turned out so much different. Unfortunately, last I heard, this dude is actually in jail. I don't know what for. I would assume drugs or something drug related. He bottomed out, unfortunately. It's kind of sad. Anyway, that particular summer when that happened was the summer of the beta code. And so I kind of like lost my friend for the summer. And so I would stay inside and play games. And so I made a post on J64. What the hell was that? Oh. Pack of Post-its. I keep tugging on a wire here. Anyway, I made a post on J64 being like, hey, I'm not doing anything this summer. I'm going to dedicate my entire summer to beta code exploration. I'm going to like make posts. I'm going to log everything as I do it. I'm going to tell you all what I find. I have 3 months to do this over summer break. This is what I'm doing. And I'm like an 11-year-old warrior. You know what I mean? Like, just posting on the internet. And so that's what I did. And so the process of like doing these explorations was kind of slow. Like I said, like you had to, put the GameShark Pro in your console, put GoldenEye on top of it, go into the specific menu, put in the Ocarina of Time code. I believe it was manual. Maybe you could save it. I don't know. Do the swap process. Now enter the beta code with your new attribute modifier. Start the game, see what happens, document it. Like you have to do all of that over and over and over and over again. So out of like the 60,000, I only got a few hundred done in 3 months. But the major purpose for this was people wanted to find the Triforce. And there was reason to believe that it was in the game. The reason for this is because... So Zelda Ocarina of Time went through many iterations before release. Many public iterations. The first time people saw it, it looked like Zelda 1. Like it looked like that version of Link. And then like we saw a tiny bit of gameplay, like really nothing. I think it was just like Link looking over his shoulder or something like that, or maybe fighting a Stalfos, something like that. And that was maybe like 95, right? Like during the run up to the N64. I think it was still called the Nintendo Ultra 64 at that point. Might have been called the Ultra 64. I don't remember. Then after that, we really didn't see gameplay for a long time. But every once in a while, there would be screenshots of it in Nintendo Power. And these screenshots, the game looked very different. Like it looked like they were like going back and like recreating older Zeldas in the new engine almost. Like that's where they were sort of drawing inspiration from. Like I said, that first gameplay preview looked like Zelda 1. Now it looked like Zelda 2. Like, a few months later, or a year later, or whatever. There's a screenshot of Link in a town, and the buildings were like really tall, and it was just like a row of buildings, and he's talking to an NPC, and the UI is shown for the first time. And it looks similar to how it does within the final release. However, couple things. I think the sword looked different, but the major standout thing was that a medallion was on a C button as a usable item. That obviously did not make it into the final release. However, it was obvious that they had plans for it to happen. Like, the medallions are supposed to be usable items. I think around the same time, a screenshot was shown of a fairy, like a great fairy. However, she looked very different than the final release. She looked like an actual fairy, not like the weird goddess-looking thing that we got. One of the other screenshots was a fairy fountain that had unicorn heads in it. Yeah, I'm like really trying to remember what else was shown, but it looked very different. But those are like standouts for me. I think it was the video for Star Fox 64. So Nintendo Power back in the day used to send home VHS tapes to random subscribers. I don't think it was every subscriber got it because there were VHS tapes I never got. However, I was subscribed to Nintendo Power for like 10 plus years. I didn't get these VHS tapes. Got the Donkey Kong Country one. That's the one that made me want to work in the game industry. I got the Nintendo 64 one that showcased Super Mario 64, Pilot Wings, and Shadows of the Empire. Got that. And then I got the Star Fox 64 video. I'm pretty sure at the end of the Star Fox 64 video, there is a very quick clip of Ocarina of Time. At this point, it might have still been called Zelda 64. But it's Link opening the chest that contains the Triforce. And it looked close to what we got as the final version, right? Like it looked close. So because it looked so close, it did not look like those like super pre-release screenshots of Link having a medallion. Like it looked like a finished game, and it looked similar to what we got at the end. For release, there was reason to believe that the Triforce was in the game's files somewhere, like as an obtainable item. The other thing is that on the medallion menu, that sort of status menu in the pause menu, you have imprints of the medallions. And then as you get them, the imprint is filled in with the medallions. The light medallion, Forest Medallion, Fire Medallion, Water Medallion, Shadow, Spirit, or Spirit Shadow, actually. It's flipped. And then in the middle, there's an embossment of the Triforce, not an imprint. So it looked a little bit different, but it was like, if you get the Triforce, here's where it goes, right? Like that was sort of the huge mystery. And of course, they were like photoshopped screenshots of, the Triforce being obtainable, appearing on that sub menu, being a usable item, all sorts of wild shit. And it's the internet back in the 90s, so like nobody knows what's true, and like it's easy to lie. So a rumor was started, and I'm glad we're perfect timing here. A rumor was started that if you managed to beat the Running Man somehow, he would give you a key to the Triforce, or like tell you how to get it. So it's funny that this is here. In the final release of the game, he cannot be beaten. Like this is all sort of made up here. This is created by the programmers of the TAS. This part, at least. So, but there was a rumor there that he could lead you to the Triforce somehow. Impossible to do. Anyway, one of the other things that was interesting was that I believe in the original manual for Ocarina of Time, the original English release of the manual, there was a screenshot of Link with adult Link with the fairy ocarina. I'm almost positive in the Deku tree. Maybe I'd have to go back and look at the manual. But yeah, can we find this right now? Ocarina of Time manual. If we find this, I swear to God, I'm going to laugh. I'm looking. Looking for something that looks obvious, but this is tough to see. Oh my God. I don't think it's this screenshot, but I mean, he has two medallions here, right? He has the Ocarina of Time here. That's definitely blue. Man, this manual is so funny. I vividly remember this thing. I don't think it's any of those. Here. No, this is it. This was the thing. So look, Fairy Ocarina here, however, has the hammer, bow and arrow, everything. Like, why would he still have the Fairy Ocarina if he has all the rest of the menu items? I can't believe I fucking remembered this. Like, this is how you know what I'm telling you is true. Like, it's there. Why is it there? I feel like you see it on a C button somewhere. Maybe not. Maybe, I don't know. I feel like it's here. But I could be wrong by that part. But I definitely remember that at least. Man, that's so funny. That is super funny. I feel like this was the screenshot that got manipulated a lot. Was this, putting the Triforce here. See how, like, it's tough to see, but, like, these are imprints. These are impressions where the medallion gets slotted in. This is embossed, the Triforce, a little bit different, kind of strange. What else we got? That looks blue to me, but that could have also been the thing. What is this, page 31? Let's keep scrolling, see if we see another one. I want to know what you're thinking. Oh, this is good. Yeah, this is way better. 31. No, that's blue. What that one? That's blue as well. He looks like an adult there, though. Maybe it's the forest temple. That's the forest temple. You can see the brick walls. No Ocarina there. Ocarina of Time here. I'm just perusing the screenshots. That's a regular fairy fountain. That's Ganondorf's horse, I think. I wish I had the manual. Okay, but anyway, that menu screen was like a key. Like, why would he have the fairy fountain with the rest of the items, right? Like, why would he have that? You know, like, this is the official manual. That was the confusing thing. Why would that be there? That's indicative that we need something. And then he's got 2 trading items here. I don't really remember that being a thing, but it's been a long time since I played Ocarina of Time. It's been a long time. But I really don't remember that. Ocarina of Time UI. Okay, I guess you do. Yeah. Oh, it's the mask. That's it. This was replaced by the mask. There wouldn't be 2 eggs here. It was mask and then trading item. Very good. We figured it out, everybody. But yeah, that was like the big thing. Like, that was indicative that like things were supposed to be different. I really lost my train of thought there. Anyway, so we started on this beta quest thing. Sorry, the previews. So that Star Fox 64 video, it showed the Triforce being obtained. And there were certain elements in official printed material that showed like weird things that didn't make a lot of sense, like the Fairy Ocarina as an adult. So it was indicative that maybe this stuff is still on the cartridge. And so using the beta quest, like there was a huge community behind this, including 11-year-old me. We were trying to figure out if you could find the Triforce. Unfortunately, nobody ever did. However, there were like remnants of the Triforce within the game. Now, it could have been possible that like what we were seeing, like some beta codes would like start you off with, like you would start the game, then you would immediately be kicked into the goddess cutscene. Like after you beat inside the Deku Tree, he tells you the legend of the goddesses, legends of the Triforce, whatever. You would immediately be kicked into that, except maybe now you can control Link. Like maybe Link is on this plane in the cutscene. Or like I said, sometimes you go into Gerudo Valley. Rocks would come down and form the Triforce. Like there were remnants of it in the game. And we did a lot to try to find it. Like I said, did a few hundred possible combinations of the code. Wasn't able to find anything super significant. But occasionally you would find something that was like, oh, this is an element from a screenshot. Like, okay, like the pedestal has the ocarina icon on it. Like this is not something, this was generally replaced by a Triforce icon to let you know to play Zelda's Lullaby. Like, but in the beta or early, pre-release screenshots, it was a pedestal on the floor that had the Ocarina logo on it. Like it was different. Like occasionally you would find things like that. Occasionally you would walk up to the Door of Time and it was closed, even though the Spirit Stones were on the pedestal. Sometimes Sheik would be there blocking it and you didn't have the Forest Medallion yet. Sometimes he wouldn't be or she wouldn't be blocking it. Like different things like that would happen. So one of the other things is, like I said before, in pre-release screenshots, the medallions were equipable items. For sure, I am like 99% sure that the Forest Medallion was shown in a screenshot, and I think the Fire Medallion at one point. The team here, in this video that we're showing in this run, talk about like they believe there's reason to believe that the medallions were repurposed and the spells that they would cast were turned into like Din's Fire, Ferora's Wind, and Nehru's Love, which makes a lot of sense. But originally they were usable. So one of the biggest mysteries that we had was whether or not, whether or not you could melt the ice in Zora's domain. And the reason this was like a big question was because you could get under the ice without a GameShark. It was like kind of easy to do, actually. Basically, what you would need to do is you would need to be Adult Link, obviously, and you needed the iron boots. And then what you could do is you can go into Lake Hylia, and I think it had to be after you finished the water temple, because you needed to be able to float down. And I think with Lake Hylia drained, like that whole like shortcut to Zora's Domain is walkable now. Like, kind of can't remember. I feel like that's the case. But yeah, you would need to like fall like a pixel off the edge, and then equip the iron boots, and then you would sink down just behind the texture of the ice blocking the shortcut to Zora's Domain. And then you'd be able to be under the water. Or under the ice, excuse me. And then you can explore around. And if I'm not mistaken, like, there was a Zora under there or something like that. Like, there was reason to believe that, like, you were supposed to be able to do this at some point, but maybe it was taken out of the game. So there was that part of it. And people felt like, well, you know, like, in order to enter Zora's Domain, you know, you need to play Zelda's Lullaby. There's a waterfall blocking it with the Triforce symbol, so that means that the Triforce could be in Zora's Domain, blah, 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 blah. Like, there was kind of a lot of speculation there. But ultimately, like, even getting under the ice, nothing changed. Like, there was nothing there. It was just a cool thing to be able to glitch and to be able to do. The other thing, or one of the other things that people speculated, was that the Temple of Time, either the Temple of Time or like the Light Temple, was a cut temple, because it's very strange that, like, you get, what's it called? You get the Zora's Sapphire, I think it's called. Yeah, the Goron, Ruby, Kokiri, Emerald, Zora, Sapphire. You get that, and then you go to the Temple of Time, and then you get the Master Sword, and you're an adult. Like, there's no extra dungeon. Whereas in A Link to the Past, there's Hyrule Castle Tower. Like, to get to the Dark World, you have to go through this dungeon, fight Aghanim, and then, you know, you're in. Perfect time. We're about to melt the ice in Zora's Domain with the Fire Medallion. I think this is like an added thing that they did. But anyway, and this, I like am tempted to boot up this game and do the glitch that I know how to do. I don't believe the Unicorn Fountain is here. I don't think so. Anyway, maybe in the 1.0 cartridge it is, but I doubt it. Anyway, there was a rumor that the Light Temple was cut, because it was strange that you just like become an adult and immediately are gifted the Light Medallion without doing anything. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's just strange. So that was a rumor. And then, like, people posted some, like, Photoshop screenshots of what the Light Temple looked like. They swore they got in. There was copy pastas all over the place about it. Like, it was a mess. But yeah, and there was also a cool thing that you could do. You could backflip through the Door of Time, making it so you actually only needed to do get the Kokiri Emerald and then go to Hyrule Castle and do the thing. You could also do something called a crooked cartridge trick. This is ridiculous. But you could, like, very slowly pull the right side of the cartridge up. And, like, if you did it very, very slowly, Link would glitch out and, like, his hitbox would go missing. And he would generally go missing too. But that allowed you to walk past Mido in, or whoever it is that's guarding the exit of Kokiri Forest. So, like, you could leave the forest without a sword and shield. You could leave the forest without ever talking to the Deku Tree. Like, you could just go and do what you want. And then, like, you could just, like, go to the Temple of Time. Well, no. As Child Link, you always respawn. Is it correct that you always respawn in Link's house as a child? I feel like there was a way to, like, move and, you know, not have to do Crooked Cart every time. But that was, like, the way you could beat the game without Sword and Shield, was doing Crooked Cart, saving at some point, and then never touching, you know, that part of the game. And you could, like, beat the game with a hammer. Like, it's funny, like, there are, like, different glitches now to do it that don't involve Crooked Cart, thank God. Because it would corrupt your save file all the time if you did this. And not just the save file you're playing on, but the save files that are saved on the cartridge. It would corrupt them constantly. But it was a cool thing to do. And I remember getting as far as the Fire Temple without a sword. Like, it was doable. So yeah, there was that. And then, of course, the hunt for the Triforce. Unfortunately, the Triforce was never located using the beta code. And, you know, there were cool glitches that you could do. Like I said, Crooked Cart did a lot. Beta code was a thing. Eventually, like, you know, different tunic colors were found. A lot of different things you could do on the GameShark. And I'm pretty sure you could combine beta codes up to like 9 of them or something like that. Like, I don't think it was infinite, certainly. It had limited memory, but there was a lot you could do. However, no like concrete discoveries were ever found. That said, though, what I really love is that, and this is like the part of the video that like gets me emotional, and I'm like getting emotional thinking about it again. It was evident through this beta code exploration that there were assets left on the cartridge. And this is something that was known forever. Like, games would get released. Sometimes you can glitch in stuff that was cut. Like, that, it's just been a thing forever. And using the beta code, you could get things to pop up occasionally. However, you couldn't get a bunch of things to pop up in a sequence. You couldn't like recreate events that were cut. It was nothing that complex. It was just maybe you went somewhere and maybe something happened. And so, watching this run of Triforce Present, even knowing that they're doing arbitrary code execution and adding their own stuff into the game and telling a story, you know, like adding in text to text boxes and adding in like pieces of a quest that are completely original and not part of the beta game, nothing like that. Seeing what they did here is incredible. And there's one final thing that I'll talk about before we actually get into it that I just remembered, and that is Ura Zelda, Ura Zelda. And I think that means like harder Zelda or something like that, or another Zelda. For those of you who aren't aware, I mentioned this before, but there was an add-on to the Nintendo 64 called the 64 Disk Drive. This was something that was talked about constantly in Nintendo Power Magazine as like the next accessory of the Nintendo 64 that you're going to need. Sequels are going to be released on it. Add-ons are going to be released on it. And it uses magnetic discs, which were like cool, big floppy discs. And they were hard cartridge discs, but that's what it was. Japan had the Famicom disk system, same exact concept. Super Nintendo didn't have one, but they want to bring back the technology and improve it for the Nintendo 64. And the sequel to Ocarina of Time was supposed to be one of those disc games. And there are little assets in the game that refer to Ura Zelda and using the 64 disk drive. Like there's like a little attribute flag that you can put on using the beta code to your file name. And like it would be like file 1, name, little flag, and it would say 64DD, meaning it had data from the disk drive in that save file. So it was very much planned. However, it never came to fruition. And it was said that Ocarina of Time Master Quest, which came out on the GameCube, was originally planned for the disk drive, which I believe they said it was. However, it was not the sequel that everybody was hoping for. It was just a remixed Ocarina of Time, made more difficult, similar to the original Mario Brothers 2. Mario Brothers 2 was completely original, all new levels. However, it was like made harder. It was like a harder version of the original game. I love Master Quest to death. One of these days I'm going to go do a run through of it with guides. But unfortunately, it wasn't the Ura Zelda everybody was hoping for. It was not the fated, difficult sequel to the game. It was just a remix. The final thing that we'll talk about is this sequence here. These blessings that they are receiving, this is completely added. And like this sequence is added. However, it was an urban legend that you're supposed to be able to walk around in the realm of the sages. And that is what they're doing. And the core rumor was that the Triforce was in this chamber of sages, but it was just inaccessible. And so using arbitrary code execution, what they're doing here is they're about to obtain the Triforce. And the room they're about to go into is the same exact room that is shown in those pre-release videos that I'm almost positive are on the Star Fox 64 VHS tape. You can look it up on YouTube. It's on one of those VHS tapes for sure. It was shown in Nintendo Power. That's what it is. Like, bar none. It is the same exact room. It did have to be recreated using Ace, but the pieces of the files were in the cartridge still, which means to me that at some point in Ocarina of Time's development, you were meant to get the Triforce. It's totally possible that, maybe it was just, I don't know, like a fallacy or something. Like it was just meant to be used for promotional content. That's it. It maybe it's just a room created for a video. Like we see this today in games, though it's a little bit worse now in games where like you do something, or a developer, No Man's Sky, even though it's had the most beautiful turnaround in the history of games, infamous for this, where the E3 demo that they showed for the first time of the game, like the first piece of content they showed for this game, was effectively fake. Like it was it wasn't even a vertical slice of the game. It was a different version of the game made for E3. The game wasn't done yet. It wasn't close to done. But they made a different game for E3, basically. That's what they did. And like in the game's files, there's a folder called E3 2015 or 2014, whatever it was. And everything they showed was in that one folder, but it didn't make it into the game. Like a lot of it didn't make it into the game. However, back in the day, things were a bit more nebulous. And, it is what it is. I don't think one's necessarily better than the other, but that promotional material showing the Triforce being obtained set off one of the biggest rumors in gaming in history. That was obtaining the Triforce in Ocarina of Time. I am almost positive GameTrailers.com and Michael Damiani did a pop fiction on this topic of whether or not the Triforce is obtainable. The verdict was no, obviously. And up until this point, it had never been actually seen in a game. But luckily, this team was able to do it. So, like I said at the beginning of this video, a lot of this is done through arbitrary code execution, which allows them to program the game in real time and do different things. This room, however, is the same room that was in the promotional material. Might have been a little bit darker. For a long time, people thought that it was underneath Ganon's tower. No joke. Like people thought that there was like an extra room you can go into, and so we would mess around with the levitation code and levitate into Ganon's tower from different angles trying to get in, just because the room looked dark in that promotional material. But yeah, so obviously this text box is custom, and everything that happens after here is completely custom. But again, they're telling a story using arbitrary code execution in Ocarina of Time on original hardware and TASBot. But yeah, that is my story of the hunt for the Triforce in Ocarina of Time using the beta code on GameShark Pro in the summer of 99 going into 2000. Seeing this run got me emotional when my friends asked me, had you seen the beta showcase or the glitch showcase? I was like, no, but I mean, I was glitching Ocarina of Time back in 99. I'm sure I know what they're doing. I was wrong. And I'm so happy to have watched this, and I cannot thank the 3 people that you see in this video enough for showcasing this. Thank you to GDQ for giving them the time slot, and thank you to everybody who worked on this. Like, if I could go back and tell 10-year-old me, like, hey, like, or 11-year-old me, like, hey, like, one day they're going to get the Triforce out of this game, I would have believed you. Like, I would have believed you, and I would have looked forward to that day. But for the longest time, I just assumed, nah, it wasn't in there. They took it out. And it makes me wonder, like, is there some permutation of beta codes, like some combination of beta codes that would have given you this room, that would have given you the ability to walk around in the realm of the sages or chamber of the sages? Is there, a beta sequence that would have actually allowed you to beat the Running Man? Is there a sequence of beta codes that would have, like, allowed you to really keep the Fairy Ocarina and like unlock some storyline as to why you keep the Fairy Ocarina as an adult, or maybe you give back the Ocarina of Time? I mean, at the end of Ocarina of Time, you do give the Ocarina back to Zelda, and she sends you back to being a child. So maybe there's something after that, like maybe. But I have tears in my eyes now. Like it was such an important thing to me during that summer when I didn't have a lot of friends. And when I wasn't allowed to hang out with the one friend that I did have at that time. And so seeing it here is just, it feels like life came full circle with the Triforce. So again, thank you to everybody who worked on this. You really made me very, very emotional watching this on the couch tonight. And being able to talk about my experience. It has been a joy. So thank you. Yeah, feel free to look up Zelda Ocarina of Time beta codes. I found a website tonight that has, it's not from the time, I don't think, but it's written like it is. Like, there's a message like, yeah, like this was discovered by me, the author of this website, blah, 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 like person's name. And I was like, oh, yeah, this sounds like 1999 to me. But it seems too new to have been from then. Unfortunately, that website, J64, if that's what it was called, is gone. I've never been able to find an archive of it, but it did exist. I know that for sure. And I used to have a binder. It was a green 1/4-inch binder, like a 3M binder. And in it, I had like pieces of paper. I would print out a lot of GameShark codes, put them in this binder, and even like regular codes in, for GoldenEye or whatever game in this binder. But I had a huge section of this binder dedicated to beta code discoveries. That binder may be somewhere in my parents' house, or maybe in the recording cut off. I ran out of space on my hard drive. Anyway, so I had the 3M binder. It had all the codes in it. I wish I could find it. It's not in any of the places that I've ever looked in my parents' house, but it's somewhere, I'm sure. It's not something I would have thrown out ever, but my mom would throw shit out sometimes. Anyway, I don't have it. I wish I could show it to you, but unfortunately it seems to be lost for now. If I ever come across it, I'll make a video on it. It actually had the stickers from Pokemon Snap that I printed out at Blockbuster. Blockbuster used to have a kiosk where you could take your Pokemon Snap cartridge, plug it into the kiosk, and print out the photos you took in Pokemon Snap. And they print onto little tiny stickers, and that's what decorated that binder. So if I ever find it, you will see some old shit. Okay, so before my hard drive runs out of space again, I want to give a thank you to my channel members, as I always do at the end of these sorts of videos. Thank you very much to John Aldrich, Tammy Skinner, Hector J. Estrada, Joe Saunders, Daniel Cockerill, Spencer Young, Phoenix Loader, Jude Lazowski, B-Tide, The Old One, Good Luck, Stu J. Mac 26, and Bag Dat Money. Thank you all so much. Yeah, if you were part of that beta code exploration experience back in 99, 2000, 2001, whenever it was going on, leave a comment. I would love to know if you ever found anything, or even if you just participated. Please let me know. If you were part of this, Triforce Percent team, for the love of God, I want to hear from you. This is one of the greatest things I've ever seen in my life. But yeah, cool. If you learned something, leave a comment too. All right. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.